Known as the best chef in Albion, Blair's skills at creating extravagant dishes was well known in the military he would cook for. After awakening his arcane abilities after a Colossus attack, Blair is able to wield fire to great effect. Blair is a fire caster Descendant that's able to endure through long engagements by absorbing energy from the fire he creates in the battlefield to replenish his MP reserves. He can clear waves of enemies with ease with large explosions of fire, and is able to buff the weapons he has in his hands. Let's take a look at his abilities, starting with his passive. Every time Blair inflicts burn on his enemies with an ability, his passive Pitmaster procs, which turns to increase his critical damage. His critical hit rate also increases based on how many flame zones are present on the battlefield. Blair's first ability, Blaze Up, creates a flame zone around him, and enemies that step into the flame zone gets inflicted with burn. Extinguish is a second ability that allows Blair to replenish MP based on the number of flame zones on the battlefield. Burn Taste is the third ability, which shoots flames forward from Blair's hand, inflicting continuous damage on enemies in front of Blair. Blair's fourth ability, Deadly Cuisine, creates a giant fireball that deals burst damage at the impact site and splits into multiple small fireballs. These fireballs, after landing, creates more flame zones in the area. To enhance Blair's abilities further, let's take a look at his Transcendent Mods. Next Level Recipe changes Blair's first ability to generate flame zones every few steps, which creates a path of fire behind them. The mod also changes the third ability, which can be enhanced by Blair's total range. This is an ultimate Blair exclusive mod. Next, we have Killer Recipe, which adds a custom resource below the MP bar and changes how the first, second, and fourth ability is used. Blair's first ability now shoots fire projectiles, which fills up the custom resource if the projectile hits an enemy. The second and fourth ability become available only if there's enough custom resources built up, and the fourth ability can now lock onto enemies. This is an ultimate Blair exclusive mod. The remaining Transcendent mods can be used by both base Blair as well as ultimate Blair, starting off with Classic Chef, which increases Blair's base crit chance based off of how many flame zones are present on the field. Next is Backdraft, which increases fireman attack as well as weak point damage after absorbing the fire zones around Blair. Truly Deadly Cuisine is next, and which increases the damage of Giant Fireball, but does not create extra fireballs on impact, which in turn does not create more flame zones. Lastly, we have Incendiary Bomb, which changes Blair's first ability to be able to create a flame zone when the projectile lands, compared to creating a flame zone at his feet. Now that we covered how Blair works, let's combine all this together into some builds. Before we get started, feel free to modify the builds to fit your playstyle. These builds work for me, but might not work for you, so comment down below which builds you would change. Now for our first build. For reactors, we're going to be using the Burning Phase reactors for all builds across, because his skills are based off dimension, and thankfully none of his Transcendent mods change that effect, so just look for any dimension reactors for the rolls. For substats, I'm using skill cooldown and duration up so I can spam more, but you could probably swap one of them out for range, is up to you. For external components, I am using a 2-piece firebrand set just for the skill range as well as skill duration, and then 2 times volcanic for the fire skill power increase. Now, you could use a 4-piece set bonus so you can have the movement speed reduction on fire skill attacks and reduces their fire resist, but the thing is I wanted to go with more survivability in this build. And if you notice, the sensor as well as the memory have max shields as a primary stat, while the sensors for volcanic and the memory for volcanic is max HP. So I'm sitting around at 20,000 HP, which is enough to do most of the content that I need to do for this build. For arcade tuning, I went to the far right to grab the enhanced skill power node as well as the cooldown node as well, and then I went into a little bit of critical hit damage because I am going to crit and I want to make sure those hit hard, and everything else is just going to be into increasing my MP pool since I will be spamming my abilities. For weapons, it doesn't quite matter, but Truly Deadly Arson is a good solid one just because it's a flamethrower and you want to fit the aesthetic and it has good damage for that, but pretty much any weapon can suffice for this. For fellows, I would say the Hagio Sheepdog, mainly just for the HP recovery, since you will be somewhere in the middle of the fight with your spams and things are going to hit you. So just top off on healing, but if you prefer going guns, you know, you can always go with the Vesper's Hunting Dog. With most of these builds, it doesn't quite matter which doggo comes with you. It's just whatever how you want to play. So for the modules, we're going to be using the Incendiary Bomb. Now, I want to note that you could use Truly Deadly Cuisine for this if you want to spam your 4th ability more and just deal damage with your 4th ability, which this build has that ability to. But the reason I chose Incendiary Bomb is because if I choose a Truly Deadly Cuisine version, it changes the force to where it does not leave a pool of fire pits once it explodes, as you can see. So you deal more damage, but not a pool. But if you change this to Incendiary Bomb now, when it explodes, it will still leave a trail of stuff. So I wanted to just leave a trail of fire as much as possible. So that's why I use Incendiary Bomb. And plus, having range for your first ability is nice. Your grapple is up to you. Mid-air maneuvering, I'm finding, is just really fun to use. I'm going to be using 3 cooldown mods: Nimble Fingers, MP Conversion. Yes, we're losing max MP, but it's definitely worth it. In Veteran Tactics. Now, this is a really fun mod if you haven't messed around with it. So you have it when defeating an enemy, you have a 19.4% chance of resetting a full cooldown. And if you're just spamming your 4th ability with this build, you actually can get some very quick resets with your 4th, which is very crazy. Because right now, even with the cooldowns, we're at 30 seconds of cooldown, but I've been able to pop at least 6 or 7 within the span of maybe 2 or 1 minute. So it's quite crazy over there. We're going to use skill extension for duration just to make sure those pools stay on the ground and deal more damage. Expansion for range, and then for survivability, we're just using the increased HP with battle stamina, keeping our duration up so we can keep those pools on the ground longer. Damage mods are Fire Specialist, Fire Synctum, and Fire Amplification. Now, we're reducing our crit hit damage a little bit, but still, it doesn't really matter. We're still going to shred through 400s no problem. And that is the build. We'll move on to the next one. Now for the second build, reactors and components are not going to change too much, but again, it's up to you on how you want to do it. Reactors, I'm using a skill cooldown with skill duration up. External components, a 2-piece firebrand set and 2-piece volcanic sensor set. I think with this build, it's sort of necessary to do this 2-piece set instead of 4-piece, just because compared to our first build, we've lost 10,000 HP. So trying to survive with this one is probably a good idea. Arcade tuning, still with the fire spam build with the skill, power, cooldown, and then a little bit of crit on the side. Fellows, I would say with this one, since we're 10,000 HP less than the first one, definitely the HP healing doggo for the Hagio sheepdog is highly suggested, but again, it's up to you if you want to go guns. And speaking of guns, doesn't really matter because we're just spamming abilities for here. So let's go ahead and take a look into our mods. So we're going to be using the killer recipe, which was released with Ultimate Blair. And this one is going to be fun because we're going to be embracing our fire bending side. So for those who've seen Avatar, and since he punches the air and all that, is going to be cool. And then you can target lock and blast with your 4th ability. So killer recipe is going to be one, and then whatever grapple hook you want for there. Now for cooldowns, we're going to be using 4-time cooldowns: Nimble Fingers, MP Conversion, Focus on Dimension, and Focus on Fire. So we're just going to shoot as much cooldown as possible. We're using a skill extension for duration, skill expansion for range, and then our damage one is the Fire Amplification, now with the negative crit hit right there. MP Accelerant is for duration, battle stamina for HP and duration, and weight the scales for max shields and skill cost, because we're going to be spamming a little bit more and we want to make sure we keep that MP in a decent range. Now, the reason we want to, if you notice, we have a lot of duration in here. And the reason is because the first ability here is that if you read at the bottom, it says inflict burn on nearby enemies. The number of meatballs fired increases with the skill duration reach a certain value. So if you have no duration, you shoot X amount of fireballs, but the more duration, you shoot more. So we wanted to pump as much duration as possible into this build so we can shoot as many from our first ability. And then just being able to use our 4th ability once we lock on and all that. And with the duration, if you just do one full burst, you'll be able to get your full bar full, so then you can spam your fourth ability a little bit more casually. So it's just a nice little combo right there, and that is the build. Now for this third build, this is going to be a little bit more on the technical side of things, so we need to be aware of what kind of stats we're going to focus on, and I'll explain a little bit more in a little bit. But for reactors, we're going to be using the same one that we have for the other two builds, skill duration and cooldown, and again, it's up to you if you want range or something like that. External components, we're going to be used 2-time firebrand set with skill effective range and duration, very helpful, and volcanic 2p set for the fire skill power increase, and our HP is sitting around at 22,000, so we're going to be a little bit more tanky this time around. Arcade tuning, it's going to be changed just a little bit. We're going to hit this enhanced skill power node, going up the tree a little bit, and we're going to go with skill duration up right here. Now this is important. We're going to be focusing as much as range as possible, and we'll go into a little why is that. So make sure to tag those skill range nodes, and then whatever left over, we actually went down to the bottom left side for this movement speed, and you'll understand a little bit why we're doing that. Weapons, again, is up to you on which ones you want to run. It doesn't matter since we're going to be spamming our abilities mainly. For fellows, I would highly suggest the Hagia Sheepdog, mainly because we're going to be up in the face of the enemy, so we're going to be taking a lot of damage, and so we're going to need that extra healing, which is helpful, but again, if you want to use the other doggo, up to you. Now, moving on to the mods, we're going to be using the next level recipe for this one, because this will change our first ability as well as our third ability. We'll talk about the third ability in a little bit. But the first ability, it changes to where you create a trail of fire behind you as you walk. So that's why we want that movement speed in our case, so we can just run and keep that trail going. And it's just really nice. So for those who use Freyna and use the toxic steps, it's pretty much like that for Blair. Grapple hook, we're going to use the mid-air maneuvering, but it's up to you on what you want to do. For cooldowns, we're using MP conversion with nimble fingers and focus on fire with a little bit of fire skill bonus damage, which is very nice. We're going to be swapping technician out now, so we can have a little bit of skill power modifier, so extra damage, fire amplification for extra skill, but you could change this out for the crit hit if you want to. Now we're wanting to have a range again. This is the most important stat, is range, so we're using skill expansion, and then we want a little bit of duration up for our third ability with extension here, and battle stamina for more survivability but duration, MP accelerations for skill duration, max MP to counter a little bit of the MP conversion deficit right there, and the increased HP for more survivability. Now, why am I emphasizing range in this? Well, if we read our third ability, it says that inflicting burns on enemies each damage cycle. Fire has up to 3 level sizes and changes levels when the skill effect range reaches a certain value. So based on how much range you have on your Blair build, you have different phases and levels. So for levels 1 and 2, he's using his left hand, which is a single burst and flamethrower. But if you get to the certain threshold of your range, you'll be able to use both of your hands and get into a wider cone. So we want to get that wide cone as much as possible. So that's why we wanted to utilize range in our arcade. Now, there's not really too much difference if you overclock your range and all that. And so that's why I did this adjustment here, is that I reached the minimum threshold. And if you still want to hit the extra range when you're doing your flamethrower and all that, go for it. But this is the minimum range to hit tier 3, but also doing a little bit more damage with that. So there was a little bit of fine tuning with this one, but hope you find this one good, and we'll see you in the next build. All right, for our fourth and final build, we're going to be leaning really hard into critical hit damage, because for those who don't know, Blair has the highest crit hit rate compared to any Descendant at the time of this recording. So we want to sort of lean into this for this build. So for reactors, we're going to still use a dimension 1, but instead of using duration up, we're using skill critical hit damage. We're still going to keep that the skill cooldown, just because that is very nice to have. We're going to be swapping our components out to a full Slayer set. Yes, we're going to have a little bit of skill cost, but we want that skill power damage output as much as possible. RK tuning, we're going to be hitting the skill enhance power module as well as the cooldown one. Now make sure you hit the critical hit rate nodes as well as crit hit damage nodes, because again, we're going for crit, want to hit those as much as possible. Weapons, like any of the builds in this video, doesn't really matter, but it's up to you on how you want to run this. Fellows, I would highly suggest the Hagia Sheepdog, but again, it's up to you on how you want to run it. Reason being is we're sitting at 13,000 HP, which isn't too squishy, but still, you're going to be hit, so making sure you top up the HP is very nice. Now for the crit build to actually work, we're going to be using the classic chef, because it's going to be based on how many flame zones are currently on the field, and it's going to increase our crit hit rate based on those flame zones amounts. And the way we want to generate those is mainly through our first ability, and then when we pop our fourth ability, we create more flame zones, so our crit hit rate is there. But all you have to do is just pop your first ability 3 times, and you have a decent crit hit rate. Pop your fourth, and then you're good to go. Before RK tuning and the reworks, you used to have to do all 4 crit mods before you can actually get decent crit hit rate 100%. But thanks to that, we can do a little bit of fine adjustments and actually have more mods that we can work with. So we're going to be using skill concentration, skill insight, and this is important, front lines. You don't want to have emergency measures. The reason being is front lines has critical hit damage at 64% with critical hit rate at 27%, while emergency measures has the critical hit rate at 64 and critical hit damage at 27. Again, just thanks to how quickly we can get that crit hit rate up, using emergency measures over front lines is just sort of like you're losing the critical hit damage, since you're always going to be guaranteed that 100% crit hit rate. So make sure front lines is important. You could even go extreme as skill insight and remove that and change it to another damage mod. But again, that requires you to have a little bit more setup. And so this is the minimum setup that you need. Pop your first ability 3 times, and you're off to the races basically. So that's why I wanted to hit that minimum threshold, but again, you can modify this how you want it. Now for cooldowns, we're going to do MP conversion with veteran tactics. Now, I'm going to be using my 4th ability, which is at a minute. And if you don't like veteran tactics and the chance of that, you can always change it to nimble fingers. And with nimble fingers, we're down to 30 seconds. So if you want guaranteed 30-second or pops, you can. But if you like the chance of doing it, because I've been able to pop like about 6 or 7 ores with this build pretty consistently, it's not too bad with the chance. Now with the Slayer set, remember that we had a skill cost of 15. Well, with Strong Mentality, we have a skill cost of -15. So that sort of cancels out the Slayer set, which is very nice for us. So yeah, we don't have to worry about that in the future. Skill duration right here, extension with battle stamina duration for max HP, increased HP for survivability, and last but not least, skill duration for MP accelerant with max MP right there. So yeah, it took a little bit with this one just to get the minimum requirements, but again, feel free to modify how you want it, and thanks. We'll move on to the next segment. With Ultimate Blair released on patch 1.2.14 along with his new Transcendent Mods, his versatility and build potential has grown significantly compared to when the game was first released. I personally would suggest players to get him because he can be sort of a jack of all trades. Also, for those who want to see things go boom and also a lot of things on fire, it's a bonus. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.